This was a really special interview with Matthew Biswas. And when I finished it, I was really excited to share some of the information that he gave to a very close friend who was going through a similar situation. I came out of this interview with Matthew feeling really optimistic about fathers who face the challenge of being solo parents when their relationships dissolve. Matthew is a very reflective person, has done so much inner work himself that as of a couple of years ago, he co-founded an organization for men working with men. One of the really beautiful parts that I was left with was men need to understand that they're not alone and that there is support out there for them, and that support is really everything. So I am sure that there will be things in this interview that will fill you with a positive take on difficult situations in life. And I hope you feel as inspired as I do when it's all over. Enjoy the episode. Too many boys today feel lost, alone, and misunderstood. Too many parents feel the same. Behind today's troubling statistics is a generation of boys longing to be seen, heard, and valued. And yet the conversation around boys' emotional lives is still far too quiet. This new season of Unlocking the Parenting Code is here to change that. This season, you'll hear more real conversations with young men, more expert voices on boys' mental health, more solo episodes where I share truths I've learned firsthand, and more wisdom from parents walking this road right now. It's time to open our eyes, open our hearts, and become the change our boys need. Boys aren't broken. They're waiting for us to truly see them, hear them, and stand with them. So tune in to Unlocking the Parenting Code for real conversations, real hope, and a new path forward for our boys. It's time. They're ready. Are we? Welcome to Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. I'm your host, Kathy, and today we have the pleasure of welcoming Matthew Biswas, a father who in 2015 faced a major life change and became the sole provider and caregiver for his three children, a 20-year-old daughter and two sons, aged 9 and 15. While single parenting is becoming more common, it's often some form of co-parenting. But Matthew's story is different. He stepped up fully, taking on the responsibility of raising his children on his own. In Canada, single fathers now account for nearly 1 in 4 one-parent families, a number that's been steadily rising. Research shows that single dads often face unique challenges, often with less support and recognition. Matthew's journey is a powerful reflection of the strength and determination it takes to raise children independently, and I'm excited to dive into his story today. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Thank you for having me.
Matthew, can you describe what your family life was like before 2015 and what shifted emotionally and practically when your wife did leave into 2015?
Well, we lived, a very sort of standard Toronto life with, people being busy. I was the sole person working outside the home. But as my youngest went to school, my wife then, was able to go back to work. So she went back to work part-time, which was fantastic. And so we were sort of evolving. Our eldest was heading for university. Our number two was, becoming more and more independent. And so, we were doing less and less of those days where, you get home and two people had to go to one direction, another person had, with lessons and activities. And so a lot of that, high stress part of parenting, which to be honest, I'm very grateful for. Just as I said, my daughter said to me the other day that thank goodness I took them skiing because she had to go skiing with some friends, and she knew because I made them go skiing and I made them go skating. Um, so those are one of the few benefit you hear those stories later in life that aren't you glad that I
Yeah.
took them. But so we were living that sort of standard life and ready for that adjustment. As I said, my youngest had just started school. My wife had gone back to work, on a part-time basis, and we were sort of ready for that sort of next chapter. And then, as it turned out, the next chapter was, Cheryl not wanting to be part of, we didn't see a future in the current status, and so she needed to do something else for herself. And so that was it. And then we sort of, I won't say we agreed. It sort of became that she moved out, and I was at home with the kids, and we had a everything was very, very loose, but we sort of with a counselor sort of came up with a plan when a visit. I'm not sure, but I guess parenting time is the correct term
Hmm.
when my sons would spend time with their mom. So that was 2 evenings a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and most of Sat and all Saturdays. Um, and as so and then the rest of the time they're with me. But I was responsible for, every packed lunch, all the laundry, all those day-to-day things, plus all the activities, and then I had sort of said, okay, well, this is the go forward, and so I said, well, we're just going to proceed as normal, and we decided, I just sort of said, nothing's going to change, nothing's going to, and I just decided, all right, everything that would have happened before is going to happen now, and that's really sort of um, how it, the opening stages of the transition.
So, my role in our family is a little different than yours. So what I really want to find out is, like, I was the sole breadwinner for a lot of our life that outside of Japan in other countries. And what I found from my side, like I kind of enjoyed it because my husband took on the role of taking care of the house, taking care of the finances, did all the grocery shopping, made all our meals. Um, I could totally devote myself to my job and the family unit, but it was very different. Like it was, although I like to think that we complemented each other, those times that we both worked, then I
Hmm.
think the division of labor at home was more, 50-50. But
Right.
if one of us was working outside and one of us was home, the person that was home
Hmm.
really took on the major responsibilities of running the household.
Hmm.
So before 2015, like
Hmm.
when you were the only one that was working outside of the home,
Right.
did you have the responsibilities that later on you were taking on as the full-time role?
Well, it's interesting. I would have liked to believe that I was pulling my weight. I remember saying to some coworkers that I was the heavy machine operator in my home. The washing machine, the dishwasher, those are sort of some of the tasks. Um, and and again, I think I did a lot of sort of outside the home. Like again, I talked about the shuttling everybody to hockey and to different
Yeah.
sports. So I think you know, in hindsight, could I have probably done more? I've certainly learned a little bit more, but sort of emotional labor that sometimes that I may have just sort of again, our lack of communication probably caused more frustration and felt that, my wife really was doing more because she'd have to, do more intellectually and emotionally, so by the time I finally got to the physical task of emptying the dishwasher or whatever it was, then she probably felt like, oh, I could have just done the whole thing myself. You know what I mean? Like I get that feeling now. At the time, I thought I was doing, coming home from work and diving in and setting the table and all that stuff, that kind of stuff. I thought I was doing my share. So I
So
mean,
what? So it's interesting to think that, having two different views. So you
Hmm.
have the view of when, you and your wife were both there and what
Yeah,
that looked like. And then
yeah,
you also now have a view of what it looked like when you were doing it completely solo. So
yes.
how do you see those differences?
Well, solo is, I mean, easier because I just made all the decisions. Like there was no, um, and also the way that our um, separation worked, there wasn't time, there wasn't any facility for any discussion or conflict. I would just go ahead and do it. So we knew when she was available, and so I would just book things and make every decision. So I hear a lot of stories about families who are broken apart, who spend a lot of time and effort negotiating and emails and text messages. And I just didn't do it. I just decided that's not what I'm doing. And we had a system that we'd used forever where we had a calendar in our kitchen with had all the social activities and everything on it for the family, and so I just continued doing that. I just put the swimming lessons on this calendar, and every again this is uh, at this time all of the school notices were still paper coming home,
Hmm.
so I punch a hole in them, put them in a binder, and leave the binder next to the calendar. And so, and she was coming in and out of the house. There was no issue with that. But um, I just it was very simple for me to just say this is what I'm doing. I mean, I had to then the work side of it and the planning meals. Oh my gosh, it is the
Yeah.
hardest thing. And the other thing I did is I made sure that I think I can't remember if I told you the story, but the first thing they did is, sort of Googled, single dad meals. And I was like, the suggestions were terrible. There was like, soup and sandwiches and cook. And it was like, no, we're not doing that. My children always had homemade meals. And so we just continued with that. And so I learned how to cook, learned how to bake and meal planning and all that kind of stuff, which is great in some respects, but it's also awful. It's because now I'm a bit of a snob. I'm not, like, I mean, you know, um, I won't, we never order,
Yeah.
we never order Uber Eats or whatever it is. We just, what, with something in the house, we can put a meal together quickly. So,
What
but
did you feel was the priority when all that was happening, like initially? What did you feel was the priority? Like, was it the meals? Was it the routines? Was it, the emotional stability for your kids? Was it dealing with your own emotional stability? Like, what did you feel was the most important thing?
well, I worked for myself, so that is a big help because I didn't need to. You know, tell somebody I was going to be late or, I mean,
Right.
I didn't have, I had clients watching me and that, but there's a difference when you're, reporting to somebody directly. So that was a help. So I was able to um, ebb and flow my work with my home life. Also, I had a I don't know what you call him, friend, partner, staff member who really was fantastic, and he really pitched in too. Um, so it's funny. I have a great story where we just finished a conference call with a client, and we had things to do, but then somebody was coming home, so I had to go get my son. And while I was gone, he was slight. He came. He just took it upon himself to slice the peppers for the stir fry. I mean, so it was a good friend and good partner.
Yeah.
And I guess the term I wanted was delegation. I learned, how to delegate some
Okay.
of those things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but the answer to your question is really um, my overarching goal was to sort of have things as close to normal as possible, so that there was nothing being missed. There was no um, you know, everything was going to go on, and mom was, looking for something else, and she can go on to do that, but I was, not going to pull her in. That was really key. That what, I was not going to pull her into what's going on at home, what's going, and so um, yeah, so I mean, my own emotions were all over the place. Oh my gosh. And it was, I'm like many people, I'm a doer, right? So it is easy to throw yourself into tasks and chores, and the planning. But oh my gosh, when you've done that high, then when you plummet, your emotions sort of take you
Yeah.
down. Um, so I mean, that was something that was very hard to manage. Had I had some support. I had made sure that I reached out to everybody I knew and just told them what was happening. And family, that first and second ring of friends. My the rector or pastor at my church was fantastic. He was very, very generous with his time. He recommended some resources. Um, so yeah, I mean, to say that you have to I chose to put myself second, and I wasn't actually sort of looking forward. I was just sort of staying as is. And I was the other thing I was going to do was I started making up for things that didn't get done in the first. So that was something else. So that
Like
um,
what? What do you mean?
house projects primarily,
Okay.
things that were supposed to be done and didn't get done. Um, yeah, I mean, that's really the biggest thing. So there was so in that, in sort of 2016-ish, we started a basement renovation, which had been on hold and up and down for so long. I just said, finally, we're pulling the trigger, and I just did it, right? And so,
Okay.
that happened. Other things, just yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, other thing, but I'll use this house project as sort of the number one example of things that we're delaying getting a new car. Boom, got a new car. That all those kind of things that we'll get to eventually, which was problematic from our marriage, which was but so I just said, all right, well, and I think from my perspective, it was better late than never. But on the other side, it was a little too little, too late. So.
Mm. Yeah, we all have our different priorities, don't we?
Mhm.
Was there any moment, like any moment at all, that you thought, I just can't do this?
Never. You know what? I just was like, I was never, I mean, it was pride or arrogance or something. I just said, I'm in this now and I am not going back. And I'm certainly not, and I was trying to be very, very, I guess sort of, on the outside looking prepared and had it together but no, this is the only path forward for me, you know.
Do you think it would have been more challenging if your children were a lot younger?
Oh, if I had to deal with diapers or something, absolutely. It would have been a lot more problematic. I absolutely think, I mean, now also, on the other hand, um, it could have been also simpler, right? Because then you just, I just think that the dealing with, teens I guess what do they call them now? Tweens,
Tweens.
tweens, and then my daughter's coming and going out of the house. There's a fair amount of chaos. So I think that if I had, you know, 3, 6, and 9-year-old, I may have been a little bit, I mean, it would have been a different type of work, um, but no, no, yeah, I mean, diapers, yeah, that might have been,
Yeah.
and
Okay,
and I
so
also think that the other side may have been wanting to be more involved. I think that was it. There may have been much more of a, what do they call this? Children going back and forth between two homes and that
mhm,
kind of stuff. I think
the
that would have
co-parenting.
been, yeah, that. Well, so can you explain that to me? That term doesn't make any sense to me because what do you call two people who live together and are parenting? Is that not co-parenting? Like,
Yeah, it is. I think it's just the term when they use that term when you're in two different, you know,
yeah,
locations.
right. But
Um,
but but what is the term when you're together and parenting?
yeah, it should be co-parenting as well.
Yeah,
I
I
know
always
you can get lost in the terminology for
well
sure.
people say that like co-parent, like, well, what is that? Like, I have no idea what that is. Isn't that what I was always? So
Well, but
thank you
that's
for trying to explain it to me.
Well, but the way you describe your situation, you refer to it as solo parenting, which is
Yes.
not a common term. So my image, based on what you've shared and what I
Mhm.
understand, solo parenting is very different than co-parenting. When I think of a family that has divided and they are co-parenting the children, it
Right.
means that they are both actively involved in major decisions, in holidays, and like all of those things. They're still very much wrapped up together. But my
Right.
understanding from what you're calling solo parenting is that even though their mother
Mhm.
is part of it when that happens,
Yeah.
you are the person who is making all the decisions, all of the arrangements independently of her.
Yes.
So that's what
Right.
I think is a solo parent, right?
Yes. Yeah. I just
Okay.
think that, sorry, going back to your initial question, that had the children been 3, 6, and 9, then the situation would have been quite different. It would have been much more of that children going back and forth. Or what do they call this when the children stay put and parents go in and out?
Oh,
I've
I didn't
heard.
know there was a term for that. I know it
Yeah. Yeah.
happens, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. There's a term for it. Nesting or something. I think that's what it's called.
maybe
Anyway,
that's a
yeah.
very difficult, that's a challenging situation for the person that has to leave every
Well, I
whatever the
know
situation
I have
is.
a family yeah, then the children stay put and the parents come
Yep.
and go. So, anyways, but
Yeah.
no, I mean, um, again, I think that we're in that beacon of time sort of worked because, I said everything was analog. All
Hmm.
the sheets of paper came home. I just signed them, sent them back. All the,
Yeah.
if the, if there was whatever a fee for an activity, I just paid it. I didn't
Mhm.
we didn't have the a lot again, I hear these stories of people fighting about hockey lessons and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
whose day is it on? And so
Yeah. I think a lot of things would be easier with just one person deciding because you can move forward a lot smoother. Okay, so now like this is 10 years ago. So your children have been um, the product of solo parenting for 10 years. What do you see as being like the lasting effect of that on your kids now?
well, I think the last thing, I mean, I hate to say this, but I think the sadness that the fact that, mom has been disconnected from them. I mean, I think that is the biggest loss. Um, that, I mean, I certainly felt that it may have been a few years of her, needing to find herself and, or whatever the terminology is, or establish something. But the connection didn't come back together. It got even further. She moved physically. So, that is certainly that sadness. I hope there's sadness. I would hope
Yeah.
that they, feel sad. Um, I think that the other aspect is, my children now sort of say that realize that I have made sacrifices to do things, to keep things as it is, and I probably have, helped, kept things from them a little bit, but I, did the best I could with, again, I was being self-employed, so being self-employed, I didn't have all the focus on my business as much as I could have, right?
Yeah.
And certainly on the early days where I was getting home or making sure that I was home at 3:30 and that kind of stuff, um, and I think that, what are the other lasting effects? Yeah, I think that I mean, I'd like to believe that my children saw, that I made them a priority and, that
Hmm.
was, and, I certainly, did my best to try and, you know, I, not paint her in a bad light. I really
Yeah.
did. I really,
Yeah.
I mean, um, because I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but I genuinely wanted to make sure um, uh, that they saw that I didn't have anger towards her or something like that.
Right.
That was
Right.
now I was also very, very, I guess the words now is, sort of holding firm on boundaries and that kind of stuff. So, for example, I bet we'd worked with a family counselor that Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. system. And if she came to me and said, "Well, I'm not free Tuesday," I said, "Oh, that's fine, okay." And so I would just say, and so I didn't. Some people
Hmm.
said, "Well, you're supposed to change, switch." I'm like, "No, if you're not free, then I'll cover it."
Yeah.
Um, and so that allowed me to sort of like bank time, so then I could take them on vacations and that kind of stuff. And so um, that was, again, it worked for me. Probably not what she preferred. She would have preferred that. Well, I would have, given up another time, but and I had, here's something that again, things I gave up and what are the cost on me? It was like I didn't take opportunities when I wasn't available. So if there was something on a Wednesday night, I didn't go to it because I
Mm.
was home. Again,
Yeah.
so I did,
Yeah.
there's some things that I gave up. So as my kids got older, then obviously that changed, but
Mm.
industry events or that kind of stuff. So I was, but again, I guess the term is the boundaries. I held that very, very, very hard.
So when your wife left, your two boys were still young, like they were
Mhm.
9 and 15. So
Mhm.
how did you consciously model the kind of man that you hoped that they would become?
Well, that was in my head every single minute of every single day.
Okay.
What are they seeing? What are they witnessing? What are they, um, you know, what I really wanted to show was okay, there's some form of both resilience as well as moving forward. And
Mhm.
that was really um, very, very, I guess that's that singular mission, right? What kind of example am I going to be? And that was it. And not, and again, doing the walk, not the talk. Not that I was really, really, and I think, one thing that we haven't talked on, which I'd like to a little bit, is just sort of that, um, I made an effort to change from who I was to who I was becoming. One of my favorite examples is that I, after listening to what happened and I decided to make some changes in myself. So, one thing, my favorite examples was that I wouldn't yell up the stairs anymore. I would say, "Come for dinner." I would walk up the stairs and say, "It's dinner time." Where for the first, whatever, 19 years of our time together, I would yell up the stairs.
Okay.
And so I was really making those shifts in behavior, which some of it was that I was told these are things that bothered me. Some of these things I was told for years and just ignored. And some of the things are just, from reading and, videos and what have you, the things that upset people. And okay, I'm going to start doing those things differently. And so that was something else that, again, what I hoped this scene was that, people, no matter, what's the term, that this old dog could learn new tricks. That really was a singular mission to me, and things that, again, aside from the practical of having to learn how to cook and clean and that kind of stuff and run a home, it was also about, what are my core values? And I said to my children, a few times that, um, I'm very sorry for what has happened. There's things that I knew I could have fixed and I didn't know to, but I'm going to now. And and I apologize to them for, mistakes I've made. And, I said, one of my favorite lines from a movie is that I won't make those same mistakes again, but I'll make all new ones. Because that's something else. Let's be realistic that there will be things that come up. And so yeah, that was, I mean, I guess the terminology now is doing the work, doing the internal
Inner
work. But
work, yeah.
I really sort of embraced that, Catherine. I
So
really
did you do
was.
that by your, sorry to interrupt. Did you do
No.
that by yourself? Did you get some professional help? Like, what did it look like for you? Because everyone has their own, like I listen to podcasts, I read books, I watch things on documentaries, trying to understand
Yeah.
my own mind and how to
Yeah.
make my world better. What did you do?
Well, I think there's two sort of books that sort of were my go-to. One was Divorce Busters. I meant to get the title, the author. That was fantastic. Oh, we can Google it now. And the other one was um, No More
Boys,
Nice Guy. No More Mr. Nice Guy by
Okay.
um what's his name? Oh my goodness. You know what? I looked these up on our call beforehand to
Yeah,
tell you.
yeah.
And then the book I read earlier is called Boys Adrift.
Right. With Leonard
So
Sachs. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, but really No More Mr. Nice Guy and Divorce Busters was fantastic. Sort of that really changed my life. And I say to men that every man should read Divorce Busters.
Hmm.
Um, um, yeah, yeah, you can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I
Um,
will.
or we can look her up too. Yeah, but again, and again, so that was it. I joined some other groups. Um, the Divorce Busters had a online forum group, which I was part of, which I was very, very, very active in. Um, and there's some couple of faith-based groups that were active in. Some had their own platform, some just used Facebook. So those were helpful. It was again, I was leaned on my faith. I did do some counseling, variety of sort of a psychiatrist and a family counselor. So I did the gambit, I guess is the term. But like most things, you take bits and pieces from it and learn. But I think what I was sort of keen to sort of say, what is different? And then the hardest part of that is like, okay, why? Why was I doing those things? And then, so that's where it really gets deep. It's like, okay, well, my dad did that, or that's the way things that I grew up watching and I didn't know was wrong. Like, or, it's funny that one thing that I um sort of come to grips with that, my own, what do they call it, family of origin, was chaotic or what have you. But I thought television was the way things were supposed to go. So I often try to act the way things happened on television. And that wasn't what people want, so it's quite interesting. um Something else that I'm trying to still learning how to do is not to stop being that one-upper. When if you told me a story about how you lost, you know you spilled your coffee all over your computer, I said, oh yeah, well, I spilled my coffee on my computer and my phone, right? That was
Yeah.
something that I learned as a learned behavior, and I thought, wait a second, and so that is some of these things which happen in our society, not just me. I just said, okay, well, that's I'm going to stop doing them, and
So,
so that's
a lot of the information out there about, the male crisis, the loneliness epidemic, the statistics around male mental health.
hmm
It's often referring to the fact that so many men can't do what you're doing, it sounds like they're not finding those groups where they feel safe enough to, to be part of the group and really share their, what's going on in the world. There's a lot of men that they say they just don't have that wherewithal. They don't have that emotional language to be able to articulate exactly what's going on. And it sounds like you really have gone deeply into trying to understand yourself and make sense of things and improve things, both as a dad, but also
Mhm.
just as a person. So that's really commendable. What do you think? Like, why isn't, why can't everybody do that? Every male.
Well, I think there's a bunch of things. I think there's that line in the sand between COVID and pre and
Yeah.
post COVID. I think that's a big factor. Um, I was always an out person, so I always liked um, you know going to activities and joining things and finding groups and clusters. So I wasn't um, fearful of that. I'd been involved with um, you know different groups. So um, but I wasn't learning anything. I mean, so
Yeah.
that made so I wasn't doing two things. Like I wasn't finding groups and making changes. I found the groups.
Mm,
And it was
okay.
easy for me to join the groups, but making changes. Um, the Again, podcasts are a newish thing, right? So
Yeah.
podcasts weren't a
Yeah.
uh, and so my own it's interesting because I am a not the sports guy I'd like to be. I wish I was. So many men I know, played like I wasn't um taken to play sports as a child and after school activity. I don't blame my parents. They were, first generation Canadians and, and
Hmm.
struggling. So that wasn't in their culture. Um, and so a lot of men sort of have that built in, right? So that they're been playing sports with men, so they have groups that they're working with. Um, so I think that has declined. So why men aren't doing that? And so again, that COVID, that line in the sand. Um, and I think a lot of people just want to stay home. They don't want to
Yeah,
face the world.
yeah.
I'm lucky because I have we're Christians and I have a community of faith-based people around me, and they, are not far from perfect. Let me tell you. Oh my gosh, I
Mm.
mean, um, so, but I think that
But
that was
that whole concept of community is something that, society as a general seems to be really lacking. So it's often easier just to stay at home and
yeah.
stay online and make whatever those connections are rather than going out into the real world. I was just thinking from what you were talking about, what I remember often, especially when I talk to young dads, or
Mhm.
dads that have young children, and
Mhm.
that time where they're almost fearful of stepping up into the role because they think they're going to get it wrong. They think they can't possibly do it as well as the mom is doing.
Mhm.
If you like, what do you say to male friends today that are going through something maybe similar to what you went through, and they're, being responsible for raising children at a variety of different ages or stages, and they're just really worried about getting it wrong? What would your advice to them be?
Um, well, I had it kind of easy because I just took responsibility for everything. So there wasn't a lot of negotiating and a lot of so I feel bad for these men who are putting up with, having to argue about, small
Yeah.
things and they take their eye off the ball because they're arguing about finances or these small things or changing days or this kind of stuff. Um, so I certainly feel I had it easy. Um, but again, as I said, I held my boundaries very, very, very strongly. And also um, if she wanted to discuss, why A, B, or C happened, then it was up to her as opposed to I would just make the plan. So, um, my advice typically is to just make the plan and go ahead and then just inform and say, on Saturday we're doing this, X, Y, and Z, or the field trips on Wednesday, and just go ahead and then end it off with any concerns.
So
So,
you mentioned a little bit earlier about how you were careful to not talk in a derogatory way about
mm,
the boy's mother. So,
mhm.
and it made me think, okay, so how as a dad were you able to, help inform their opinion of females, of women? Like if what they're living in their world
Mm,
is what they've lived through,
yeah,
how have you been able to help them understand that that's one kind of situation, but like just talking about
yeah.
relationships with women?
Well, that is, something that I wish I'd done more or had done better. And some of it is, it's kind of funny because I've sort of have raised my sons to be bachelors. Um, my youngest was eating a piece of toast over the sink the other day. I'm like, perfect. That's exactly what bachelors do. And um, often I just take the sheets off the bed, wash them, put them back on the bed, as opposed to having a system of you take the blue
Yeah.
sheets off, you put them in, you put the red sheets on, which is a little bit more. But so um, so yeah, I do feel there is something lacking, in not having um, you know, both seeing me and their mother negotiate, talk, and so that is something that I feel awful about, really. I mean, that they're not
Yeah.
going to see that. Um, and um, you know, the other part of it is I haven't dated or whatever, I haven't had somebody else in my life for them, so that, again, they're missing out on, so to speak. I do believe that sort of, um, I like to say that I'm treating everybody with respect and how to listen and how and there are some things that like again every day in our home throughout these entire years that there is a mom would have done it this way, or you know I only know how to do this because that's the way mom did it, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of that, um, and it's I don't know what you want to call it, it's paying homage or something,
Hmm. Yeah.
so there's a lot, and there's no question that there's no bashing that happens,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, which and so and again, um, but that lack of feminine influence, I think, is important is missing. It really is, and so I
Do
feel
they
bad.
ever talk to you about, like I can remember my son when he was going through the teens, and I remember him talking to me about this girl that he was going to start to date, and he was madly in love. Like, do they come to you with that kind of conversation?
Not as much as I'd like. I mean, I
Mm.
think I don't know if I've been as open as I have. We have that, they've had relationships and um and have been supportive and have tried to be educational as well. Talking about, I wish that I could have done that better, but I mean, yes, but I mean, like there isn't a topic in their lives that isn't discussed here, whether it's
Hmm.
money or relationships or um and it does help to have the two boys because often there's a well, can you older, boy, can you give the younger boy,
Yeah.
what happened to you with this situation? So there was a lot of that. um yeah, so it did help. And again, my eldest, my daughter, she parachutes in from time to time, and she lived with us for a big chunk of that, like for 4 years or something of that. She lived with us, and so that was, again, was wonderful. So they did have
Mhm.
a sister, full on board. And there was a very special times actually when we were all four of us in the home together. It was, again, there was a lot of sort of learning too, a lot of,
Sure.
yeah. So,
So do all of your children, but especially the boys, do they follow your kind of drive to make sense of the world and do their self-help and read their books and listen to podcasts? Like, are they that kind as well?
yeah, I think so. I mean, I know my
Okay,
eldest son, he was reading a book the other day, similar, but sort of man's place in the world. I'm like, oh, okay, this is,
cool.
that was good. Um, yeah, so I would like to, again, the amount of information that they have at their fingertips and have no idea what's
Hmm.
going on is
Yeah.
so, um, I mean, my eldest son is a sports guy, so I mean, a lot of, and I don't know if you've been following in Canada right now, there's a trial going on
Yeah.
with some
With
professional
hockey.
hockey players who had assaulted a woman. And so it was great. All right, this is something to talk about. It's so, because that's something he's very close to, but also very serious. And so,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so I do believe, like, I'm thrilled that all of my children are sort of high achievers. I mean, it's
Hmm.
wonderful. I mean, some of it, I'm taking the credit on some of it, and some of it's on the other side, and some of it is, who they are. And also our society also rewards that. I mean, I think that it's good and bad. I think that there was a article I was reading, sorry, I don't have the reference, but talked about how our world is geared for extroverts.
Hmm.
And so one of my children is an introvert, no question. But I think that having lived with extroverts. He sort of knows how to, draw in what he needs and disappears when he has to. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, I think just, like it sounds like your communication is really strong. And I think when parents can have that kind of really deep communication with their kids, it lasts forever. And if they
yeah,
also have tools and skills that they understand how to, you know, thrive,
yeah.
you know,
It's It's funny. Thank you for saying that. It's strong. I don't know. It's strong. I again have this, oh, I could have done more, should have done more, so, and some of that's that perfectionist in me, which
Yeah.
I have to beat down, and some of it is also, um there are some things that I wish I'd done a little bit more, and it's too late now. You know?
Okay, so tell me a little bit. I know only I haven't been able to get any information before talking with you. But I know that you are involved, which is how we connected initially, but you're involved with what's it called? Men in Mastery.
Yes.
So tell me, when did that start? Like what year did you start that? Was it before the 2015? Was it after the
Yeah.
2015? When I was raising my son, I longed for a guide, something real, honest, and grounded in what boys truly need. So I created the book that I wish I'd had. Packed with tools and real world strategies that actually work, you'll learn how to nurture his emotional world and finally understand the feelings behind his behavior. Because boys don't need punishment, they need guidance. We'll bust the myths that keep boys boxed in and help you support him through the real challenges of growing up. Most of all, it's about transforming your connection, one small moment at a time. Raising boys who become remarkable men. Get your copy today and let's create a beautiful future together.
In 2023. So,
Okay.
yeah. So, one of the groups I'm involved in had a retreat, and one of the leaders of the retreat is a sexologist, Dr. Stephen Witt. And he's fantastic. And he does sort of personal counseling and and so he led a couple sessions on, men's world and sexuality. And again, and I said, he's fantastic. And so I had him come to my group. And the first retreat was, talking to 50 men. And my group was 9. And we had a fantastic rapport and a real amazing results from the 9 or 10 men that attended that. And I said, we need to keep doing this. We need to keep. So that's when Men in Mastery was born. It's a program for men, basically helping every relationship in their life. But the one that they don't, the one they don't want to work on is their sexual and interpersonal relationship.
Yeah.
And one thing we've had great success in telling men is that it'll impact every relationship in your life. And most of the relationship skills are the same, right? Listening, talking, but Men in Mastery really we've had a series of um, workshops that we offer. Either we have a group. If you have a group already, we can come to you, or we have ad hoc groups where we host 9 or 10
So
actually in the
did you co-found this or
co-founder. Yeah, we
okay, so
co-founded.
you're both running this together.
Yes.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so with your boys,
Yeah.
are they into, young men's groups? Do they understand the power of, having that kind of group?
So informally. So my youngest son is involved with his with the summer camp that my kids have gone to, and I actually went to as well. It's a faith-based camp. And the level of friendships that he has, that he's had known these young men since they were, 10, um, is pretty intense. And they're in a safe environment. And so they have, again, it's kind of crazy how much time they spend together, in respect. But I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier that he's with me again. Um, you know, they're doing things that young men do, but they really are, good people and have and they also have really good mentors. So they're counselors and what have you who are, you know, 5 years older, 10 years older are fantastic as well. I think that's something I really need that they don't lack for good mentors. So that is something I'm thrilled about. Again, but that was a conscious choice to get them into
Yeah.
environments like that. So,
But
and
also,
again,
what a great role model. Like, what a great role model if your dad is someone who helped start up a group to support men and
yeah,
and you're a male yourself. Like that's a That's a pretty powerful role model to have. Just understanding men need men.
Yep. And all the information that we've grown up with is wrong, right? We our parents, chances are, fumbled through it and didn't have a great, you know, didn't really learn or hone the relationship skills. You know, um, television's bad, and never mind the polarity that is showing up in our world with, uh, yeah, I don't want to get into some of those very popular podcasts or, that are happening right now, and, then and leading to things like pornography and what have you else. So there's a lot of um, negative stuff, right? Which is
Mhm.
easy to grab onto. But we're trying to build something where, that men have the opportunity to learn something else, but again, have the ability to see they're not alone. I think that is so important that we're all in that. And again, I love telling the stories about um, uh, what happened to me, and often, like the story that I was at we had an event, and I'd taken chili and cornbread. And oh my gosh, the guys are like, "This is fantastic! Such a good cook." I'm like, "I never wanted to be a good cook. Trust me." I just decided, that was key for me, though, that to make sure the meals that were in my home were the same,
Yeah.
not the same quality, but at a high standard. And so, anyway, so that was, and then that leads that to that conversation about, okay, well, why did that happen? Why am I able to do this? And what was I able to change about myself? What did I learn? And and what, so
Well, it's
that
really
is,
all about growth, right?
yes. But it's
Yeah,
about, um, it's about, it's going, uh, yeah, I hate the term no regrets because I have so many regrets, Catherine. But it really is about, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, right?
right,
That's
right.
not going to change.
Yeah,
That I do truly regret many, many things. But it's like, okay, that's, as I've said in that movie, I'm going to make all new mistakes, but I
yeah,
won't make the same old ones.
yeah. Something I find really hopeful about, different men's groups and different, like some for younger men where they do the men's circle, like a rites of passage kind of thing. But one of the things that kind of excites me and I hope to learn more myself is just like to understand males. And so I don't understand males as a female, but the sad thing I think is that a lot of males don't understand males.
Mhm.
Like even something as simple as like I think males understand women a lot better than women
Mm.
understand men. And I think they try harder to
Mm.
understand us than we try to understand them. But there's things that, like you said, there's an overwhelming amount of information out there today.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I'll grab onto something that will be telling me, about some research that's been done about like I really looked into testosterone for a while because I
Right.
was trying that's one of the really big differences and
Mm.
how that affects, the thinking process, how it affects our our boys when
Right.
they're
Right.
going
Yep.
through puberty and adolescence. We have no clue about any of that. And too many boys, I think they don't understand what it means to be a boy. And so I think there's so much confusion as to just, that, one is not better than another. And we just need to
Yeah.
be more aware of what our differences are and then support each other to grow better together. So I
Yeah.
love that you're doing so much with men's groups. Like I really, really love that.
That's good. Yeah, no, and there's a real, I think, opportunities you're talking about for those teen young men to have something like that. Yeah, the rites of passage is funny that every author ever talks about that was the way that, when in our society or in our in humanity, young boys would be with mothers and sisters until puberty, and then they would switch over. There'd be a ceremony of something of some
Hmm.
kind, and yeah, it's interesting. I wonder when that. Um, I mean, I guess industrialization is probably the biggest time. When
But
things
it's
started.
really something that I like. there are so many positive
Yeah.
results from a boy having that experience. And like I've seen some really interesting things going on in Australia connected with that. I
Mhm.
tried to do that for our son when he was 13 or 14 being a perfectionist and also understanding that I had no role in it. Like I couldn't be there for the ceremony. I
Yes.
couldn't like it was not about me, but yet I organized the whole thing because that's my thing. And I have no idea if,
Yeah.
what impact it had. But it's like, it's that whole thing of surrounding young boys with exemplary men who
Hmm.
share their stories and their experience so that they feel that they have that village, they have their community, which so many boys I don't think have that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky, I think, because summer camp was a very,
Yeah.
very big part of my life. And so, again, when the camps are mixed, typically in Ontario, the little kids, so, between 6 and 8 or 10 are sort of is a mixed, and then it's boys only.
Yeah.
And again, I cannot tell you the number of sort of I guess mentor. I'm gonna is just those examples, those
Yeah.
men who were counselors and leaders who were what great examples they were, um and I mean just um unfortunately it's just those few weeks in the summer, but still you go home with those memories, and it'd be nice if you can take that forward. Again, for example, playing an instrument, something. I remember coming home from camp dying to want to play guitar. And of course, my family didn't really support that, right?
Yeah.
But again, I remember going back the next summer and that same counselor there playing, oh, it was so cool, right? And so,
Yeah.
but those kind of experiences that I had, and I certainly like have given to my sons as well. But um,
So I
so
worry
again,
about young boys
teachers,
now
yeah,
because we don't have many people don't have that strong religious background. So you don't have those religious camps. You don't have, weekly Sunday school or, youth groups to connect it with that. And and besides that, some of the, like I just read, or not read, I was talking to someone just yesterday, and they were saying that they had grown up, their, male grouping was the Boy Scouts. And now the Boy Scouts is
mhm,
not only men. And it was interesting. And when he said it, he said, he said, think about it, that we have curves, which is, women only exercising, and
yep,
men have no issue with that. They don't go, knocking down the doors and saying, this is segregation.
yeah,
But in the same light, if you have things like Boy Scouts
yeah,
that is only males, all of a sudden, in order to be fair, it has to be equal. And I think that's the problem. Like we're not equal. We all have needs that can only be met by this situation or that situation. And I don't think we recognize. So I worry about young boys not having, those kinds of experiences just to kind of, you know, make them feel like they're part of something bigger than
yeah.
just what they're living in.
Yeah, and I too went to Boy Scouts as well. And it's
Yeah.
something, again, there was things like I didn't get to do at home, but I got to it opened me up to other experiences like camping and things like that.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think that's the other part of it is that those, I think the term is these third spaces. Have you heard that term? That
No.
not home, not work or school, but other places to go. So church and,
Okay.
camp
Yeah.
and these kinds of things offer people, um, again, a whole new set of mentors or guides, whole new
Yeah.
set of experiences. And so, yeah, there's fewer and fewer of those. I think that is, again, in Canada, the Boy Scouts has dwindled. With every time I looked into it with my sons, it was very, very small. And
Yeah.
that, yes, the mix genders was a factor, but it's just that it's hard to find them. It's very, very
Yeah.
hard to, um, and it's like most things, I guess my generation, didn't become the leaders for whatever reason, right?
Hmm.
So, it'd be nice. I mean, somehow maybe we'll see a rebound to those types of organizations. I mean, sport is obviously still strong, but that's not everybody. And there's also expenses and things that not every family has, or I mean, so
But
that
I think like one of the things you said was core values. So I
yeah,
think, like the core values that you have instilled in your children, the core values that I've instilled in our son. I think that's the hope for the next generation. And I think they will be the ones, like it'll be our boys who will be helping to pull up, and move that next generation in a just a step higher than ours, a little
yeah,
bit more, compassionate and understanding. Listen, I
yeah.
want to be mindful of our time here,
Okay,
Matthew. And
sure.
so
I could probably chat with you all day, so I won't. Thank you
I
for your
know.
time. Yeah.
Well, once I get started on boys, I could go on forever too. It kind of fills my cup. But is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you wish we had of?
Oh, I'm sure once we disconnect, I'll come up with five or six other things that, I mean, I mean, I think that if somebody asked me about what do you do for boys, what can I do for boys is different, is that keeping them busy. I think that was really something that um, was a hallmark of my parenting style was keeping them
Mhm.
busy. Um, and with structured activities, but even like, some of it was kind of kooky, throwing the ball or walking the dog or those kinds of things, but just keeping them, and then allowing for downtime. I think that was the other thing that, I was, okay, now it's time for television or whatever it
Yeah.
is. I think that was a sort of a hallmark of my sort of parenting is, and encouraging them to try new things. As I told you, my daughter was very happy that I made her learn how to ski. Um,
Yeah.
and and that was something else. So that then they a won't be they won't feel won't feel like outsiders. And secondly, that okay, well I learned sure. I didn't learn how to snowboard, but I did learn how to ski, so that shouldn't be too hard, right? So that kind of thing. But yeah, but that was sort of my hallmark, and also just just saying I'm doing everything, I'm making decisions and going forward. So. I think that's it. That's all I can share with you, Catherine.
Well, I think that your family is really lucky to, for the way that you have, made that transition into a different way of life. And from what I can, gain from just speaking with you and knowing you just a small bit,
Yeah.
you're the type of person who walks the talk, um, but also is constantly trying to understand himself better and make things better. And I think that's where it's all about because you can get kind of, stuck in things and
Yeah.
you don't seem to have that issue. So good on
Well,
you.
pride, I think as that pride goes before the fall, a lot of people have that sort of um are not changing. They're
Yeah.
just yeah, and that's very sad. But
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, exactly. Matthew, where can people connect with you or follow you or find out more about this men's group or anything like
Um
that?
Absolutely. So yeah, menandmastery.com. And we're on Instagram as well at Men and Mastery.
Okay.
That's the number one place they can find me on anywhere else, whether it be any social media, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just Google Matthew Biswas, and m- there are a few of us, so you might have to put in Matthew Biswas Toronto. But there
Okay.
are, I'm surprised. But yes, I'd love to connect with your audience and love to hear more, and love to be part of your community too, Catherine. So if you
Well,
ever
you
have
you
panels or
certainly are a
something.
good fit. You're a
If you
perfect
have
fit for
panels or
this.
something, I'd love to be part of it, or or so.
Wonderful. Well, I certainly will keep that in mind. Um, Thank you. And I will put all of those links in the show notes for people to have. And I really do thank you for coming on.
Mhm.
Unless I have been upswept, I think this is your first interview.
It is.
So
I'm very excited.
you've done a great job with that. But I really thank you for coming on and sharing all of this. And you know, I am sure that someone listening to it will be inspired, not because people go through hard times,
Yeah,
and there are ways that can make it a little bit, you know, not easier, but smoother, perhaps. So I'm sure that some of the things that you were able to talk to definitely will help someone to feel a little bit more inspired and empowered.
Well, the number one thing is you're not alone. I mean, I think that's just it
Yeah.
with every, that when you are going through whatever it is, job loss, marital crisis, whatever it is, I've gone through them all. It is that you're not alone. And unfortunately, the people immediately around you have a what's the word? Have a stake in it, right? So, if you lose your job and your partner's, now they're vulnerable and so it's hard for them to be supportive. So, but or whatever it is. If your you know marriage is breaking or whatever the issues you're going through, or um, it's that immediate circle around you may not be the best initially, but
Yeah.
your podcast or other resources could really help, push that person over the hump.
Well, and I think especially for men, like in the introduction for you, I said that often the research says that men who are solo parents don't they face different obstacles and sometimes don't have the same support that a woman would have. So
Yep.
knowing that there are resources for men and that they can reach out, they don't have to do it alone, and that there is a really positive way forward. I think that's a very beautiful way to end this episode.
Thank you, Catherine.
It's been my pleasure.
Mine
So,
too.
to our listeners, thank you for being with us today. And don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend, and come back next week for more real conversations with boys. Thank you for sharing your time with me today. Every conversation we have here is a step toward raising boys who feel seen, heard, and deeply valued. If you're looking for more support on this journey, I invite you to visit me at sonhoodcoaching.com. You'll find a link in the show notes. And as always, thank you for being part of this important movement. Until next time, take good care.